Please come in. You're right on time. The door only opens when the clock strikes midnight. Georgia and Hannah are preparing to broadcast from the belfry. Just like this old bell tower, they have many stories to tell. Some old and some new. Follow me up these stairs, but mind your step. Ah, they're waiting for you.
What I talk about is going to be very different from what you just talked about, because you have a lot of resources of people talking about things. This no one really talks about this too much.
That's okay. We're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it. Being from like the 5th century of the Common Era,
Hell
you know.
yeah.
Like,
I got an emotional support Pepsi.
nice.
Because whatever you're going to tell me is scary.
It's
and
really
I hate
not.
that voice.
It's mostly storytelling because
it's scary because we'll just go ahead and say for the listeners that Hannah is running a Monster of the Week game, and what she's going to talk about, my character has just captured as a pet in a locket, but it's probably not the kind of pet that anyone should actually own, you know? Like a tiger. It's going to fucking kill you in the end.
Maybe. So yeah, the Vetala. It actually has a couple names which I was unaware of. Vetala, Vital, Betal, Betala. I think the internet uses V and B interchangeably because when you say it out loud in Hindi, it has sort of that like B noise, which I'm not going to do. So the Vetala is the closest monster that one could place it to would be actually a vampire. According to Hindu mythology, the Vetala they're better known as a class of spirits that dance and feast on flesh and blood on the field of battle. They've also been described as demons and deities and creatures that inhabit your dreams. I thought
it was like one specific thing, not like a species of things or a race of things.
Yeah.
Okay. Hell yeah.
The existing literature, they are more of a specific thing. In modern adaptations like Supernatural and Monster of the Week, there have been a few monster encyclopedias where the folks that wrote these encyclopedias kind of did their own thing just because they equated the Vetala with vampires a little bit more and gave them descriptions of what a vampire would normally look like, and you know their thirst for blood and their hostile nature, that kind of thing. But as we just talked about in the last episode on Sleepy Hollow, the Vetala is actually quite a bit different. It was based entirely in oral traditions, which I will get into in a moment.
Hell yeah. So
the Vetala, in the set of stories that it originated in, it's a spirit essentially, but it needs to inhabit a human in order to sort of be among humans. So they inhabit corpses. And they hang out at burial grounds or cremation grounds, and yeah, they possess human corpses. They really like to mess with the human mind. They're really keen on trying to understand human nature. They can be pretty chaotic, which I'll explain in a little bit.
All of this,
I knew you were
talking about me.
That.
It sounds like you're talking about me.
Yeah. Unlike you, they're known to kill children, cause miscarriages, and drive people mad just for the funsies.
I might do that if there weren't legal ramifications. You know, I hate kids.
So the set of stories that the Vetala is derived from is called two different things, two different names that I could find. The Vetala Pancha Vimshati, or the Baital Pachisi. It's a set of stories it's a part of a larger set of stories and legends called the Katha Sagara. I can't remember. I looked it up how to pronounce it, and I have the memory of a rock. So this compilation
was it Gawain the Rock Johnson?
Gawain the Rock Johnson. We don't have any cool name like that here, unfortunately. There's only a couple. Nope, there is a funny name.
Hell yeah.
In one of the stories that I will read. So, hi, Seth is bringing me coffee.
Oh, your emotional support coffee, my emotional support Pepsi. We're good. We're caffeinated.
Yes.
I did drink a lot of coffee this morning because I needed it to get through my morning meeting.
I was going to text you earlier this morning when I had my first cup. I hot coffee I drank in like 3 minutes. I don't know what was going on. It was something else.
You know my big ass wine glasses that I have, like the stemless ones? It was full.
So
full.
Mid-meeting, you were like,
yeah, and I had my breakfast sitting there, but I kept not wanting to eat it because no one else was eating, and I was, we were all on Zoom, and I was just like,
let me just go off camera here.
You don't know what I had? It's been my breakfast hyperfixation lately. 10 out of 10 recommend this to everyone. It's a piece of toast, and then I put cream cheese on it. The original thing I saw for it was ricotta, but I didn't have ricotta, so I just went with cream cheese. And then a slice of ham, and then slices of pear, and then drizzled with honey.
That sounds pretty good.
So fucking good.
That's like the breakfast version of, I was going to say a breakfast version of an avocado toast, but I feel like that's breakfast.
Yeah, that's breakfast.
I don't know. Well, avocados are savory, and I'm a sweets fan in the morning.
It's so good.
The hell were we talking about? Oh yeah, I was trying to pronounce that name. So this set of stories was compiled long after the stories were first being told. As I'd mentioned, it's a part of a big set of oral traditions that were all just put together in the 11th century. I love to think about time all happening at once. So for those of you that are curious, in the 11th century, the Crusades began.
Hell yeah.
William the Conqueror invaded England.
1066.
Cahokia got a huge population boost. It was the beginning of the early Mississippian. The Seljuk Empire was founded. Science and technology was booming in China and Japan. And Leif Erikson settled in Canada.
Hell yeah. We love Leif.
Just in case you were curious what was going on in the world. I was curious, so I had to add it into my notes. Are you kidding?
One of the things that is completely unhinged that I've always wanted to make, like, in a room like this, is just a world timeline that kind of goes, like, all the way around the wall with, like, different events happening from all throughout history.
There's something online that exists like that. It's one of those, like, side scroll things.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see everything that's going on, like who died this year that was really important. It gets really interesting in the 11th century because that's when the Great Schism happened and all the popes started getting real fucking crazy.
Hell yeah.
So also in the 11th century, this set of stories was put together. If you can believe it, this set of stories about the Vetala was a part of another set, which was part of another set that has been lost to time. So it's just basically whatever's been left over.
Kind of like the Bible.
Mm-hmm. So like a lot of folklore and Indian folklore, this compilation was written many, many years past its original creation. So these stories are this big set, it's origin stories, fables, and honestly, it's probably derived from like gossip, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like that's how oral tradition works.
We love it.
You and I well freaking know.
Yeah.
People were passing along this set of stories sometime in the middle of the first millennium. Like everything that I could find was between the 4th and 6th century. 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 4th and Girly pop, that's 200 years. When did it begin? Who's to say? But it
that's no time. What are you talking about?
Yeah. It was passed on in a form of in a dialect of Prakrit, which was its counterpart is Sanskrit, which you probably recognize. Prakrit was like the everyday tongue. It wasn't used so much for like official documents or literature as much.
Like hieroglyphs versus Coptic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they weren't entirely different languages. They were used interchangeably. It was more everyday, like regional way of speaking is what I wrote.
Vernacular.
Yeah. So the dialects of those languages became obviously what we know now, like Hindi, Urdu, Tamil, things like that. So by the time that these stories were written, Prakrit was no longer being spoken or written. So there's probably translation errors, which is one of my favorite things. And then it was further on translated into Hindi and English, which is what I read the stories in.
Oh, is it? You didn't read Hindi?
You
didn't go learn Hindi just to do this?
I have read a couple books, like 2 or 3 books that I've copied. No one do this. This is illegal. Copied and pasted from the internet, like a free PDF, put it into Google Translate just to see if it ends up funny or if I can, have some fun with it. Anyhow,
a translation error is how we have the concept of a blood eagle, like the Viking, like,
oh yeah,
splitting the rib cage and everything. That wasn't actually a thing. A translation error led to that depiction of things because wait, do you want me to go into this?
No, yeah. I mean, I'm into it.
So it was a description of how after battles, the bodies would be left on the battlefield and the Vikings would, well, the Norse warriors, I don't want to say Vikings, they would leave their enemies' bodies on the battlefield, slice their flesh open to make it more appealing for carrion, and then leave them to be like eaten on the battlefield. And that was their way of disrespecting their dead enemies, basically,
rather than like natural decomposition.
Yeah, or like, sending them off to the afterlife properly or whatever.
Yeah. And carrion have always sort of been seen as nasty, dirty, evil.
Yeah. Somewhere probably in the 11th century.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. That practice was being described, and somewhere along the way something got mistranslated and it became this opening of the back as a way of killing someone and torturing them. That's like one of my favorite fun facts.
This is why I love the internet, because mistranslation is getting harder and harder to happen.
Because Google is stupid.
Yeah. Whereas like pre-Google, you just had to rely on each other's mouths to know, and mouths and minds to know what the hell is going on. And a lot of translation, as we know, is almost entirely based on context of time and personal bias or, social bias. So
yeah, and Google has no common sense.
None whatsoever. It's a robot.
It's a man. Are you kidding?
All men are robots.
Yeah, well, they sure shit don't have common sense. Anywho,
so I explained a little bit of the history about that. I don't want to call it a novel. I don't want to call it an anthology. Compilation, recension. Yeah, recension of stories. So now I'll start getting into what the stories are all about.
Do it. You won't.
The stories are made up into 30 chapters or around 30 chapters. Every version is different, and the English ones that I read were like 26 or 27. There's one English version that is significantly shorter, which I will talk about. It's my favorite version because it's so terrible. But it's all based around a frame story of which has been mistranslated and changes for every freaking version that you could find in any language, because probably through oral tradition people just change that part up to be more interesting, or like to give more context or less context depending on how exciting it seems.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially it is about a few characters, the first of which I will talk about is King Vikram, or Vikramaditya, as explained in the story's frame. He was born from one of 3 dead baby parts.
Cool.
You heard that right. His father was also a king and had heard of a hermit man who was meditating in a nearby woods for 1,000 years without speaking or moving or presumably eating or opening his eyes. The king visited with a few of his fellow dudes, I don't know, servants, knights. It's hard to tell.
Advisors.
Like, advisor, well, they're lesser than him for sure.
Yeah.
He tried to get the man to open his eyes and eventually speak with him, but he did not budge. So he finally returned home back to his palace, his throne, and he opened it up to his court and asked everybody to go interrupt the hermit, get him to come here. I want to talk to him. I want to see if anyone can manage it. But, and I quote, not a single man offered to disturb him. So a woman spoke up and said she'd do it. And then upon visiting, she found that just sitting there and sleeping near him and trying to get him to look at her, because she was a beautiful woman, dressed to the nines, did her makeup, made herself look very desirable, and just, hot lady action. He did not open his eyes. So she did what any woman does. And the way to a man's heart is through food.
I knew you were going to say that. Ichabod, is that you?
Yeah, she noticed that at a certain time every night he had a piece of bark in front of him that he would pick up, eyes closed, pick up and chew on. So she made, what is it called? Oh, I didn't even write it down. It was a delicious sweet. It was like a sweet pastry in place of where the bark was, to get him to eat that. And he ate that shit up. So then she started placing more out and more until he started to fatten up. See, a man who hadn't eaten or opened his eyes for 1,000 years is going to be skin and bones, right? Well, now he's a plump dude and he was feeling very tempted. So after succumbing for quite a while, I think it was like a year or maybe more, he opened his eyes, put his eyes on her, fell in love. I think he was just dry as hell and he hadn't seen a woman in like a really long time.
Listen, this is so rude and disrespectful of his boundaries.
Mm-hmm. But the king said to do it, the Raja.
So rude as fuck.
She fell in love with him, was infatuated with him, or maybe it was all just a ruse. They had a baby, and she even convinced him to return home with her after he had like magically built a mansion for them in the woods to spend all their days together.
With what fucking money does he have?
But he's so magical and powerful because he's able to meditate for 1,000 years.
Yeah, I guess. Okay.
They went back to visit the king. He did not let them hang out for long or really say much before he admitted that he'd sent the woman off, and it's like, haha, you stopped meditating, got you. So the hermit man was pissed. He flung his baby's cradle to the ground. The baby was thrown out violently and broke into 3 pieces. And because he is so powerful, he was so strong, the baby's parts were sent out into the world. Its trunk, its chest landed at a potter's house. The limbs landed in an oil merchant's house, and then the head stayed with the king.
Wait, what did the king want in the first place? I already forgot because
he just crazy. Wanted to tempt this guy to see if he could do it, to see if he could get this dude.
He didn't actually want help or anything.
No, he heard of this all-powerful dude, and then because he was unsuccessful in getting this hermit dude to listen to him, he was like,
salty bitch.
Yeah, pretty much. Eventually, the body parts just like disappeared, and the women in each of those houses gave birth to a son at the same time. So then all three sons' horoscopes basically said they'd be super awesome and powerful and would be capable of ruling the world. One of whom was Vikramaditya, or King Vikram, as I'll call him.
Mm-hmm.
The others I will get to at a later point when I talk about the background of the Vetala.
These kids are all adopted, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they were, according to the stories, everyone was just like fine with it. Like,
this
whatever.
is my kid.
Yeah. Well, no, because hold on. The women did give birth to the sons. The body parts disappeared.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah. Okay.
It was like the genetics.
So it's like the king's wife or whatever that gave birth to the kid after the body part disappeared.
Yeah.
Biology, man, is crazy.
Yeah. There's so much talk about sex and reproduction in Indian folklore.
Yeah, I know.
Big
it's
fan.
Great.
Big fan.
Also, I mean, it just kind of, it doesn't sound dissimilar to Immaculate Conception.
No.
So, okay.
Yeah. They can believe it. I can believe it. Fuck it. Sounds fun. Okay. Except for the giving birth and having a child part.
Yeah, fuck that.
So King Vikram eventually grew up, became king. And at one point, a man came to visit him and gave him a fruit every day for 20 years as an offering.
Okay.
The king kept all of the fruit in a room without eating them or opening them until one day the man came to visit, brought a fruit, depending on, the translation, whatever. The fruit falls onto the ground and a ruby pops out. Turns out that all of the fruit have rubies in them. So the king is like, oh God, all right, send somebody to go take a look at the rest of them, open them all up. And he's like, well, how could you do this? Because now I owe you. He supplied him with so much wealth. That's like every day for 20 years, thousands of rubies.
What kind of fruit was it though?
Big fruit. Big juicy fruit.
Fine.
I don't know. What would you imagine? I'm trying to think of like a big juicy fruit of Western India.
Mango?
Maybe. That sounds good to me.
You can get mangoes in India.
Everything I read just said fruit,
Yeah.
Fruit. Ironically, this person who's come to visit him is a sorcerer. We know that. The readers know that. The king does not know that. Until the sorcerer asks him to go to a very specific cremation ground at a very specific time, take down a corpse hanging from a tree and bring it to the sorcerer to perform a ritual. And then the king is like, oh, interesting. That's disgusting. Fine, because I owe you and I've given you my word and I'm true to my word. I'm a very brave and powerful man and I think that it'll be fine, essentially.
Why is the corpse hanging from a tree? There's so many questions.
It's
not important. Continue.
It's important later.
Okay.
The sorcerer also knows that the king is wise enough to know what happens next. So the king makes it to the cremation ground. It is terrifying. There are creatures walking around with blood red eyes and bloody parts all over. There's smoke coming from the earth. It's a dark place, a cursed place. It's full of the dead, Mm-hmm. There's so much imagery written, at least in the English translations. And even when I was doing my initial Googling months ago for this creature, summaries of what happened in these stories talks about how awful the cremation ground is. So just be aware, it's an ugly, nasty place. He makes it in there, very brave. He's like looking around, terrified, but he makes it to the corpse in the tree, painstakingly gets it down, because every time he gets into the tree, the corpse moves to a different branch. It just sort of appears to a different branch until eventually he
also
cuts
rude.
It down. Yeah. And when he slings it over his shoulder, it starts to speak to him. I actually have a couple images for you.
Oh yeah.
So we'll just start at the first photo.
Oh,
What do you think?
that dude's hanging upside down.
Sure is. That's absolutely more of a modern adaptation, but just, you know, the vibes, the spooky vibes.
The penis details on the pants, man.
And then the image just below that is when the corpse comes down.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the king throws the corpse over his shoulder or onto his back, and it begins to speak. The corpse, which we as the readers know that it's been possessed by the Vetala, he or it says that he's going to tell a story to the king. But if the king speaks aloud, he will be sent back to the tree to be taken down once again.
Oh no.
Because he plans to ask him a question after every tale. If the king does not speak, but he knows the answer, his head will explode. But if the king does not know the answer, then the Vetala will go with him. Knowing that this king is wise, he's gonna have to answer because he's gonna know the answers to all of these riddles.
Mm-hmm.
He's able to answer 24 questions to 24 stories before the Vetala hits him with the 25th tale and the king gets stumped. I'm going to talk about just a few of them. They are kind of insane. If you want, I definitely suggest watching the late 1980s Indian TV show, Vikram Aur Batal. It gets into the stories in a really entertaining way. If you look at that document, not the cartoon image that's next, that's actually a really popular children's illustration rendition, but the one of the dude with the with the thing on its back, it's from that.
Mm-hmm. Oh
It's
God.
incredible. I watched a couple episodes, and I will summarize them here, and I will ask you a riddle after each one. See if you can answer it.
Wait, say it again. If he knows the answer and doesn't speak, his head will explode, but if he does speak, the corpse goes back to the tree. So he's just going back and forth to this tree 24 times.
Every single time.
Oh my God. Okay.
He gave this sorcerer his word.
Yeah.
I should say they use a different word for this being in every text that I could find. Yogi, ascetic, sorcerer, tantric, magic man, like any word or phrase you can think of that just refers to like kind of evil magic person.
Yeah.
Or maybe even just
my eye just twitched a little bit because I hate Magic Man from Adventure Time so much.
Okay. So first one that I want to talk about, and I'm just going to read right from my notes. I supremely summarize these because they get quite long. A man falls in love with a woman, marries her, and they're both out walking to their home with another male friend. Robbers attack them on the path and behead both the man and the male friend. Distraught, the woman tries to kill herself, but the deity that she worshipped brings the men back to life as an answer to her prayers, just for being so devout throughout her life. The woman is so excited that she gets confused and puts her husband's head on the friend's body and the friend's head on her husband's body. And the Vital asks King Vikram, which one should she consider her husband?
Okay, well, I don't really know the answer, but what was I saying in the last episode about about if I was really high and I got to thinking about your identity being in your brain and your head being your identity?
When you said that, I had to keep quiet real quick.
And beheading.
There are a lot of things that I've written down that it's going to be throwbacks to last episode.
Well, okay, with that being said, I would go with the head.
The husband's head?
Yeah.
That is correct. King Vikram also said the husband's head and friend's body because the brain controls the person. The body does not control the person. So I wrote down a couple of themes that I noticed just from this tale, since as we know, oral traditions are typically used to sort of wrest control of social agendas and groups of people.
teach values and
Absolutely. Just in this one alone, there's devotion to a deity or god, religion,
mm-hmm,
adultery,
mm-hmm,
potentially, philosophy,
mm-hmm.
your mind controlling the body, and medical science
Mm-hmm.
because of how powerful the brain is. Fun stuff.
Yay.
The next story that I want to tell you about, a prince and his friend are out walking when they encounter a pretty lady. They ask her name, where she's from, and what her dad does for work, which I wrote, who gives a fuck, but whatever. She doesn't speak because she's shy, and she touches various parts of her attire and body with a lotus, which the prince sees as a puzzle and manages to nail down her name, where she's from, and what her dad does for work just from that because he's so in love with her, so in tune. He asks for her hand in marriage. They are madly, deeply in love. Unfortunately, his dad, the king, also thinks she's hot and wants to marry her. The prince's buddy disguises himself and talks to the king, saying that the lady seduced him and the king better watch out. Well, the king is pissed and exiles her because he thought he was the only one. So then she and the prince can get married. The Vital asks King Vikram, who is more sinful among the three, the prince, the friend, or the king?
Oh my god. Well, the friend is the only one who was deceitful in any way, right?
Was he?
Well, I don't know.
He disguised himself to go talk to the king and sway him away from the woman.
Yeah. I mean, he lied.
Yeah. I will say that's not the answer. And no, it's okay. It's hard.
It is hard.
A lot of
I'm also
these,
not good at riddles.
it's
In
okay.
general.
I didn't really pick ones that have like the super hard riddles either, except for the very last one, but that's the one the king gets stumped by.
Yeah.
So it's the king because the prince was in love with her. He had no ill intentions. He intended to marry her.
Oh yeah.
The friend was just trying to be helpful. So then the prince,
The king was being a greedy fuck.
and the king exiled her without any proof or evidence.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So the themes I noticed: betrayal, facts,
Mhm.
the need for a proper trial,
Mhm.
justice, judging carefully, democracy,
Mhm.
whatever, friendship, true friendship, loyalty,
Mhm.
and love.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Next story. This is the last one that I will tell before I'm going to talk about the ending story, the stumpy one.
Okay.
I picked this one specifically for the name. Gunkar loses all of
Okay.
his dad's money by gambling. His dad and family kick him out. He walks
Mhm.
around until he meets a magical saint-like person who offers him anything he could want. Gunkar asks him for these powers, like the power to grant any wish, and he's given explicit instructions of what to do. It's exactly 2 steps. In the middle of the first steps, of the first step, he gets distracted and goes home to tell his family what he's up to because he's so excited.
Oh my god.
Well, then he goes back to finish the second step, does exactly what the yogi says, and he does not receive the all commanding powers. The Vital asks King Vikram why wasn't he able to get those powers, although he did exactly as instructed. And you could probably guess the answer.
He's got that ADHD, man.
You do. Because Gunkar didn't do exactly what the guy said, and he split the steps because he was distracted. So I said that in this story, there's a theme of like laziness and carelessness and not having a warped perspective of what's important to your family, kind of thing. Gullibility, maybe? Don't know. So those are just a few tastes. There's a lot of other themes in the stories that follow. Those are among the early ones. So the last story, which I have personally tried to figure out, and I can't. I've like drawn diagrams and such.
Oh my god.
A father and a son go out into the world, a chaotic world following a war. So a land that has been devastated. They come across a king and a queen and a princess, so a mother and daughter. in the wreckage of this world and eventually end up marrying them. However, the son marries the queen and the father marries the princess. The son and queen have a son. The father and princess have a daughter. The Vetala asks King Vikram, what is the relationship between the two newborn children?
Oh my god, okay. I want to draw a diagram. Hold on.
Seriously. The son's child with the queen would be the father's grandson, right?
Yeah.
But because the father is married to the princess, it would technically be his mother,
okay. The mom and the son have a son, and the question is, what is the son's relation to the father?
What is their relationship between the newborn children? Are they cousins?
Yeah.
What is it?
Okay, hold on.
Son and queen have a son. Father and princess have a daughter. It's truly stump worthy.
So then the queen is hold on.
And this does follow the whole thing, like, because the father is married to the princess, the queen is like his mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Type thing. I have not Googled the answer, so if you come up with something, I'll probably be like, sure.
The two, they're not related.
It's interesting because you could answer by blood or by marriage, but it's confusing either way.
Yeah. I mean, if you take out oh god, that's still not right.
Yeah. Very bizarre, isn't it?
Half sibling.
Is this what doing an escape room with you is like?
No, I'm better at those.
Just sitting and whispering to yourself like the answer to the puzzle. That's great.
I don't know. Like, I keep wanting to say they're cousins, but that's not right. Because if the father is that's so they're grandchildren, and then they're also half siblings to the other kid.
I think.
What is their relationship to each other? Like, what is okay? Like the son and the daughter are now step siblings to each other. They're step cousins.
Kind of. I think the answer I personally came up with is if you ignore the fact that in familial relations, you can't be more than one thing, the answer is two answers.
Yeah.
You just have to accept it, you know?
Well, my thought process is that in the queen marrying the son, that means that the son and the princess are now step siblings and vice versa. So they're if you take out the step aspect, then the kids would be cousins. So I was right in my own process of thinking, okay, that's what I'm going with.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have some better words for these things now, you know?
Yeah, and also I don't know anything about family trees
in the 5th century.
In 5th century India, although one of my cultural anthro teachers probably did, because that's where she got her PhD.
Yeah, we need to draw a kinship diagram with the circles and triangles.
No,
I love doing that. Shout out to kinship diagrams for those of you that don't know. Google one,
and then hyperfixate on making your own.
Yeah, make one for your family.
Anyway, okay.
So the Vetala is impressed, tries to get him to speak, but he can't because he doesn't know the answer. So then the Vetala is all, okay, you did it. Good job. I'll go with you. And tries to get him to speak some more. And the king will not, because he knows that if he speaks, the corpse will go back to the tree, and he doesn't want to do that shit again. But he has no answer. So it's like he's also being tempted by the Vetala to say something, to respond in any way. He doesn't. So the Vetala is like, okay, to gain your trust, I'm going to tell you a little secret. That guy that wants me knows what I am and that I'm an all-powerful being. He is going to perform a ritual on me and kill you so then he can take over the world, essentially. He will be able to become king since you will be dead, and he will be all powerful because he will have me in his service. So the king is like, I kind of doubt that. Eventually makes his way to the sorcerer with the corpse. The sorcerer has set up this whole ritual and is ready to perform and take over. He's giddy with excitement. And I believe what actually happens is the Vetala tells him, the sorcerer will tell him to kneel, which a king doesn't do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in order to sort of get past, or when the king is kneeling, he will be beheaded. So the king should ask the sorcerer, I've never done that before. Can you show me how it's done? Which he then does. The sorcerer gets down on his knees, and the king chops his head off. And the Vetala is like, you trusted me. Thank you. I owe you a boon. And you know what King Vikram says? The favor he requests of the Vetala is to take the stories that he was told and make them well known throughout all his people.
Oh my God.
He's like, I'm setting you free. Just make sure that the stories are well known. So the Vetala's like, word, I will come whenever you need me. I will make you all powerful because you helped me and I respect you.
It's got Aladdin vibes.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Which Lord knows what that movie was derived from,
I mean, I know that there is a more traditional, it's not from India, I don't think, though. That's a topic for another day.
Sure is, which I will probably dive into. Okay, let's see. I know I mentioned at one point what the Vetala's deal is. Yes. The Vetala originated from a set of twins.
Oh, it's Chinese.
Oh.
Continue.
Okay. Oh, I did know that. Yeah. The Vetala originated from a set of twins, originally human.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not human, human-like deity,
mm-hmm.
whose parents taught the Vetala everything one could possibly know and treated them like shit. And taught their brother only the basics of living, but treated the brother really, really well. The Vetala became all-knowing about past, present, and future through that education, but then was a chaotic asshole because he was never treated well or fairly.
Mood.
So it's generally understood that the corpse is actually, I'd mentioned the trunk and the limbs of the dead baby,
mm-hmm.
other sons. The corpse is that of I believe the potter's son. Don't remember. One of the sons that the sorcerer killed
mm-hmm.
to get the Vetala trapped in there because they knew that the Vetala like to inhabit corpses for the funsies, while the sorcerer was the other son trying to take over the world, since there was that horoscope of like, you will be so powerful and take over the world. It all comes full circle.
Okay, so the king that went to the burial, the cremation grounds,
mm-hmm.
is from the head.
Mm-hmm. The corpse is from, I believe, the trunk.
Uh-huh.
And the sorcerer is from the limbs. Limbs.
Okay. So why did he need to inhabit another body?
The Vetala?
No, the sorcerer.
Oh.
No, like, I get what you're saying.
He would have the Vetala under his control
because they both grew up from these weird magical births.
Mm-hmm. So, like Briar, he wanted to control the demon.
Yeah. Wow, that's not ominous. Okay.
Hey, man, I'm not going to tell you anything.
Hey, I respect him. Fuck you.
Like the king.
Well, Briar respects.
Yeah. So the Vetala, through these stories, explains some pretty tricky moral or logical dilemmas that really require cunning, common sense, and some sort of ethical understanding, or at least a common sense and ethical understanding of life in the first millennium.
Mm-hmm.
The other stories that I did not mention sort of have commonalities in teaching loyalty, justice, and compassion. Duty is a big one. Friendship, sacrifice, very common. And then in the ones I covered, science, religion, and philosophy. There's a lot of themes
mm-hmm.
here. Just like in Greek or Nordic mythology, they also cover a lot of the same topics in an
Mhm.
effort to teach the masses
Right.
about a particular agenda, unsure of origination, maybe just, from pre-existing ideas. But sometimes it was to spread the word about like modern teachings and discoveries in the sciences, to make the ideas more mainstream, to make them more modern, like the medical sciences.
Hell yeah.
So, why is such a creature included in the story? Why does it have to be such a spirit who wreaks havoc and enjoys chaos? Clearly, the Vetala is entertained enough in telling these stories. He goes through 25 of them without breaking a sweat, essentially. He just continues on, throws some new ones out there. And I think, this is my own analysis, it's a clever way to explain that to be a truly great person, like the king wants to be, as your destiny, air quotes, explains that you have to be determined. You have to stay loyal and follow through on your promises. You will be tested throughout your life by something or some things that wreak havoc and cause chaos. You'll be given hard questions. So you have to have the smarts and the gall and the wherewithal to get past the things that trip you up
Mhm.
by following a certain morality, I suppose. So, some themes that I noticed specifically in the English translations. A very popular translation, or should I say rendition or another recension, was published in 1870 by our very own, everyone, clap your hands for our father of anthropology, Sir Richard F. Burton.
Oh boy.
He also translated 1001 Nights, aka
Oh yeah.
Arabian Nights, and the Kama Sutra.
Oh my god. Well, that's a classic for the ages.
Oh god, yeah. Talk about sexy themes. Come on now. So historically he was known as being very anti-colonial. But you can only get so anti-colonial in the late 1800s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the preface, he equates King Vikram with King Arthur, for God's sake.
I mean, maybe in the sense that they fulfill these roles of being like an idealized leader.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. It's an easier way for the reader to
Yeah.
digest because
It's
they know who that is.
yeah, this is giving me like Joseph Campbell, like if you get into it's like an archetype, right? Like not necessarily, well, kind of a heroic archetype, that these are values that those archetypes have.
Yeah. He was supposed to be the strong, brave, willful character.
Yeah.
That's seen in epics across fucking time.
Yeah. Not the Iliad though. Looking at you, Achilles, you dumb
No.
fuck.
Okay. But I digress. So much of his translation is really told through the lens of an Englishman of the
Yeah.
mid to late 1800s. He did a lot of research. So despite the research that he clearly did to tell the story accurately, I'm using a lot of air quotes,
Yeah.
as he read it in Hindi, he still pretty obviously wanted to add his own dramatic flares and flavors. I read his version through Project Gutenberg. I highly recommend it for his use of Shakespearean language alone. I added kind of an edited quote. "Oh, wretch, who art thou? Hearken to my words." And some such things like that.
It's like when Beowulf was written down, it was written down by the Christian monks. So it's like all the old English for a hot minute, and then it's just like, oh God.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, but definitely take it with a grain of salt, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, these stories were actually used as a textbook for English officers at Fort William College of the East India Company to learn Sanskrit. It was translated into other Indian languages and
that is
dialects.
a fun fact.
It is. That college did not last very long, and for good reason. It did a lot of fun stuff there. So some more modern interpretations, a couple of which you'll probably recognize. There's that fun 80s TV show. It covers a bit of the frame story. So what happened with the king and his origin, but not really. It really just covers most of the stories and then what happens in the end.
Mm-hmm. Like a Tales from the Crypt version of
exactly
these fables.
There have also been some movies. There was one that was released in the 80s. There's been some children's cartoons, and there was actually a really recent movie. It was a neo-noir film released in 2017 and then was re-released in 2022 in Hindi.
Oh.
Truly fascinating. They added an entirely different character from another set of stories, which it makes it really interesting. But I watched
Is it like
the trailer for it. It was really fun.
I had a better analogy. It reminds me of like the 90s Hercules and Xena,
Yeah,
but like Hindi
those are definitely the vibes.
instead of Greek mythology. It's
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
I'm fully on board with that.
Hell yeah. Let me see. Do I have a picture?
I'm not on board with Kevin Sorbo, but I'm on board with Hercules.
So if you scroll down from that photo of the of Vetala hanging on King Vikram, there's that book that says Vikram and Betal, Life Lessons for Our Times. That's a book that I recommend for yourself or kids. There's some beautiful illustrations in there. And it's also pretty easy reading. If you scroll down one more time, you'll see something you might recognize.
Is that Sam?
That sure is Sam. The Vetala has been mentioned in Supernatural. Extremely inaccurate.
Right.
But there's
2 episodes in a row we've referenced Supernatural.
There's a reason that it's so inaccurate, because it's actually based on a certain version or interpretation of the Betal.
Is it because she's a woman?
No, from Sir Richard freaking Burton, dude.
Okay.
So the more modern interpretations characterize the Vetala as being hostile, causes madness and miscarriages, and then tortures children for fun. You know, who can blame it?
Stop screaming!
And so we blame him. We blame Sir Burton. He described the creature in his book, which is called Vikram and the Vampire.
We love the alliteration.
Yeah. The first mention of vampire. This recension was published in 1870. He described this creature as having transformed the corpse into a taloned creature with pointed ears, bulging eyes, leathery wings, and a long tail that also hung upside down from the branch of a tree.
Yeah, that sounds like a vampire bat Dracula thing.
Sure does. So I also added a little quote of he mentioned in the preface the reason that he made all of these changes, especially with what the Vetala looked and acted like. He wanted to clothe. Of the stories, he wanted to clothe the skeleton with flesh and blood because he thought that it was lacking in something. I don't know.
Personality?
So he really just added his own shit. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
Whatever. So it is, some people believe that Dracula is inspired by his rendition of the Vetala. The Vetala lurks in cremation or burial grounds, takes demonic possession of corpses, hangs on a tree. Bram Stoker's Dracula was published in the late 1890s, 1897. Is that right? Long after these tales were first introduced in oral tradition and then compiled in the 11th century. And then even longer after it first started being translated into English in like the 1830s, 1790s. I can't quite remember. People say the Prince Dracula was inspired by Vlad.
When did that came out in 1870?
1870. It was first published in 1870.
The first Western vampire story came out in 1819. So I wonder, which was The Vampire with a Y by Dr. John Polidori, who was Lord Byron's doctor on the trip, the Year Without a Summer trip, where Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, when they had their little writing contest to see who could come up with a scary story. Polidori started writing The Vampire. Well, actually, Byron kind of started writing it, then gave up and got distracted halfway through and didn't finish it. And Polidori took the story, finished it, based The Vampire on Lord Byron himself. That came out in 1819. And that was like one of the biggest influences for Western vampires. So I wonder if that being in the kind of zeitgeist,
it's very possible
if
that
like the two ideas like were
Burton was like, hey.
conflated. Yeah.
Bram Stoker was actually a huge admirer of Sir Richard Burton's work. They exchanged letters quite frequently.
Oh, I love it when I love it when two people that you don't think are connected get connected.
Mm-hmm.
There was also another, just to like fill in that time gap, there was like a Penny Dreadful kind of version of a vampire story that was released in the 40s as well, called Varney the Vampire, again with
Ooh,
the alliteration.
I love it.
Yeah, maybe the 1800s was just the year of the vampire,
It was
the
poppin'.
century of the vampire.
Yeah, and they were all talking to each other about it. I mean,
Yeah.
these writers, I was going to say anti-colonial writers, but I don't want to say that. These writers were all kind of in communicating with one another about what the hell is going on in the world, because the adventure explorer types were just so verbose and they had so much to say, and everyone who could read wanted to read about it, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone who could write wanted to write about it.
I wonder if there's some of that, like what I was saying in the last episode too, about like the cannibal horror tropes being a product of colonialism, you know, where these so-called explorers are going out and learning these stories from other cultures and then kind of conflating them with their own. Because like, think about, there were so many vampire panics themselves in the 1800s because of how prolific TB was at the time, and a lot of like Eastern European superstitions were attributing TB to vampires. And you have like this intermingling finally of all these different like cultural folk tales and mythologies.
It's fun. Like, you can read when it changes from "this is weird, I don't know about it" to almost a fascination
Yeah.
or an obsession, because the fantastical or the other just seems so interesting and not scary, but also scary because they're writing, you know, scary stories.
Yeah.
But it's like it's a beyond a point that's real, so it's more digestible.
Yeah. And there's also that level of beginning to understand scientifically what's happening.
Yeah, you're able to share knowledge a lot faster too.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned vampire scare in reading up on if Bram Stoker might have derived any sort of knowledge from Vikram and the vampire for Dracula. I actually found a link talking about it a little bit, and there is a reference to a vampire scare in 2012.
Is this the one that Josh Gates went to investigate
I think so.
in Romania?
No, this is in India.
Oh, okay. Damn it.
Yeah. People claimed that local vampires were attacking their cattle and sucking the blood from the cattle. Nobody could convince them otherwise. So local politicians came up with an idea. They offered a bounty of $2,000 to any villager who brought them or captured or killed a vampire. Yeah, that's written correctly. In point of fact, officials believed that the whole thing was a hoax perpetrated by criminals trying to scare the villagers into staying off the streets at night so their operations would not be disturbed.
Oh my god.
But it's still happening. People believed the shit out of it.
Yeah. When was that? I'm gonna look that up. Hold on. That was in 2015 when Josh Gates was in Romania, and there was like a story about people in this little village, and someone had died, and they were like, that guy's a vampire, and they dug up his corpse and burnt his heart, and they like consumed the ashes.
And they were so serious.
They were so serious. And the guy was like, I did what I thought I needed to do to protect the village. Yeah. He didn't give a fuck.
Vampires are demons. It's so strange how a lot of what we've talked about overlapped.
I know.
I did want to talk about one more thing, something that's it's less fantastical. It's more like anthropological.
Hell yeah.
So this is, I want to talk about the cult of Batal. This is not in the sense that you and I would be like, oh, a cult, but it's just like
a Roman cult.
Yeah, like a collection of worship for a particular deity. So in this case, Vetal is a deity who's just another avatar of Shiva, which we know there are many. Betal is very popular and recognizable. Those who live west of the Fertile Crescent might recognize his image. I think I added, yes, that statue. That's the last photo in the pictures. So like the creature described in the stories, Betal in this instance was one of twins. Rather than being quirky due to being raised differently than his brother, his family was cursed from kind of a weird fucking situation.
Oh no.
So a divine woman named Parvati was having sex with her man while a guard stood outside to keep watch. She walked out, naked as the day she was born, and cursed him to be born as a human for looking at her when actually he wasn't.
That's just rude, lady.
And he became Vetala or Betal. And Betal is sort of a protector deity for the community. He just walks the world wearing the sandals that people leave out as like offerings.
Sandals for offerings?
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah. So if
I don't know why I like that so much.
If you visit a shrine of Betal, you will see
piles of sandals.
Yeah, it's like I think it's a certain kind of sandal. The images that I saw were like the ones that have the two things to like prop you up from the ground. You know what I'm talking about?
The ones that like monks wear.
Yeah.
To minimize their impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could have just been like the pictures that were used, but fucking I don't know.
I want some like platform summer wedges, please.
Yes.
If anyone leaves sandals as offerings, they either have to be like the platform
like
summer
foam
wedges
ones,
or no, the ones that look like they're made of rope or something. You know what I mean? Like the ones you could wear to a summer wedding, something like that, or just like your Dollar Tree flip flops, please.
Yes.
Either the height of fashion or the height of comfort.
And they have like the American flag on them.
Or jellies. I would take some jelly sandals too. The classic purple with glitter.
Crocs?
No, absolutely not.
I got some Crocs for Christmas.
If I ever see you wear them, I will probably hide them.
Just wear them around the house and stuff. So yeah, I believe that's all I wanted to cover.
What a world we live in.
There is a lot to it. I love talking about mythology and how it pertains to real life and the social agenda and who's trying to push this shit on me. I don't want to hear it. I want to do my own thing, except I'm not like that at all. I absolutely follow the status quo.
Also, I feel like we need to be explicit for the record that in Monster of the Week, my character's name is Briar, and she recently captured this demon in a locket.
I absolutely went with the modern interpretation, how it's like this evil creature. Hell-bent on wreaking chaos.
We also just happen to be dealing with vampires on the side.
Yeah, crazy how that is. So now, well, I was going to either give Georgia all of this information to deal with the Vetala, or she was going to Google it anyway. So yeah.
So now next time we play,
you'll have some more information.
Some leverage, some reasoning, some... She'd probably Google him in character, honestly.
Oh yeah, if you have access to Google, why would you not Google? Google is God.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions about the rest of this story? Pretty bananas.
No. I mean, I'm still really hyperfixating on what kind of fruit it was, but it's not important.
Yeah. I'm sure I can look that up for you.
Like mangoes is the thing that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah. Let me see. Wait, let me see if...
I don't really know what fruits are native to parts of India.
I have another translation in my sources. Let me see. I have one on Kindle. Let me look at that one.
Oh, a jackfruit?
Oh, jackfruit? That would be good.
Guava, lychees, papaya, types of plum, bilimbi. I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool.
Bilva fruit. What is that?
I have no idea.
Oh.
Starfruit. I love starfruit.
Indian Bael. Billy or Bell?
Oh, that's on here. Like the black one with the white middle.
Pale brown or grayish. It's
a wood apple.
Bael. Oh,
yeah.
Bengal Kintz, golden apple, Japanese bitter orange, stone apple, or wood apple.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm still gonna go with mango. I don't know.
Okay.
That just like because I have the big, stones in the middle, and that'd be a good spot for a ruby to
Oh,
sit.
apparently it's Bile's season right now.
Oh,
Great.
I want to try one. County Market has starfruit right now,
Ooh,
and I love starfruit.
the fibrous yellow pulp is very aromatic. It tastes of marmalade and smells of roses.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, that's fun.
Well, that concludes this week's broadcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you wish to stay in touch, reach out to us at broadcastfromthebelfry@gmail.com or stalk us on Instagram at broadcastfromthebelfry. Again, I hope you've enjoyed our little show. Please rate and review. And until next week, stay spooky.